Well, good morning, folks. This is Billy Trout, Manager of Taxpayer Education for the Tennessee Department of Revenue. On behalf of our Commissioner, David Geragano, and our Taxpayer Services Director, Elena Turner, we welcome you to today's presentation on business tax return preparation. We have quite a few people attending today's webinar, so it'll be a little challenging to get to everyone's questions today. But a lot of you have submitted some questions prior to the event that we'll be addressing, and we'll try to get in as many of the other questions in as we can. So as we begin this presentation here today, just know that we have a lot of folks, and we're going to try to get to you as much as we can. We're going to introduce you to a couple of folks that are with us here today. The first of which is Mitch Gibson. Mitch is one of our call center managers, and his team answers mostly telephone calls, as you can imagine, on business tax issues, and he'll be with us here shortly as well, too. We have our Assistant Director, Mr. Dan Vincent, online with us as well. And to kind of get us going here and to begin the presentation part of what we're doing, we have Katie Julian in our taxpayer education section. So Katie, if you will, take it away and go ahead and get folks going this morning. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Billy. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. We have a lot of people still signing on just by the second here. So just one thing I wanted to mention to you guys, I saw on the news just this morning that today, March 29th, is National Mom and Pop Business Day. You can read more about that on the U.S. Small Business Association's website. Thought that was pretty cool and appropriate given the fact that we are discussing business tax today. Of course, in Tennessee, business tax affects all Tennessee businesses pretty much. We'll get into that here in a minute, but just love supporting small businesses here at the Department of Revenue. We love to support businesses in general. We like to say we don't make the laws, we just administer them. And the best way we can do that is to support you, small business owners and tax professionals, by educating and assisting. Billy mentioned our call center manager, Mitch, is on this webinar with us. If you call our call center, the number you'll see on the screen right there, between 8 and 4:30, you will get a person, which I think we can all appreciate that. It's nice to speak to a real live human being. That's what you get when you call into our call center. We'll say certain days of the year, tax day, it might take a little longer. We got that coming up just next month. But also keep in mind this email you see on the bottom of your screen. We'll put it up again later, revenue.support@tn.gov. That's another great way to get in touch with us during business hours. We will get right back to you with any tax questions or account questions you have that way. One more thing I want to get to before we get started is to announce to you guys we are starting back up our new business workshops. Before COVID, we used to have those in person throughout the state, but now we're going to be doing the events, for now at least, virtually. And we have our very first one coming up in just a couple weeks on April 5th at 8:30 Central Time. That's a longer webinar than these monthly tax webinars that we do. It's going to last about 3 hours. So you can sign up for that by going to our website, our taxpayer education website. You go to tn.gov/revenue and then click on taxpayer education and then click on new business workshops and register for that. It'll be a great opportunity if you're a new business or you're thinking about going into business or you're a tax professional that helps businesses. Hopefully lots of great information there about all the different tax types and some other stuff as well. So all that said, I'm going to go ahead and dive in here to today's tax webinar on filing the business tax return. Today we're going to discuss briefly who's required to file, when to file, where to file, and most importantly, how to file. We'll spend the bulk of our time here discussing that. About halfway through the hour, we'll be able to answer some questions that you all have presented to us and inform you all of a few resources, great resources we have on our website and other places as well. So first off, what is business tax? The Tennessee business tax is a tax on the privilege of doing business by making sales of tangible personal property and services within Tennessee and its local jurisdictions. more information on this is in our business tax manual. Here in a little while, I'll give you some more information about how to find that manual. It's a great resource, but the business tax applies to a taxpayer's gross receipts. Deductions are taken later. Basically, line 1 of the tax return is gross receipts of sales and services that are subject to the tax. Um, uh, we'll dive into that a lot here in a bit. Business tax is derived from taxable sales per location, and that is done by the appropriate state and local tax rates. Our system calculates that for you, which is great, the rates that is. And one other thing I just want to mention, that the tax here in Tennessee is comprised of 2 separate but complementary taxes. There's a state level tax and a municipal level tax. They go hand in hand. This next slide will detail that just a little bit more. This is a chart that basically details what I just explained. Tennessee in-state retailers with $10,000 plus of sales of services or products in any county are going to be subject to that state level tax, and as well 10,000 plus in a municipality. So the way that works, basically, if you have a business and it's located within a municipality that has business tax enacted, for example, you're in, let's say, Chattanooga, Tennessee, you're going to pay business tax to the city of Chattanooga and the Hamilton County as well. So out-of-state retailers with $10,000 plus in Tennessee or with Nexus are subject to the state level tax. Tennessee contractors, it's a little bit more complicated for contractors. Contractors with $10,000 plus in gross sales in their home county or $50,000 plus in gross sales in any other county are subject to the state level business tax. Contractors with 10,000 plus in a municipality, so a city or town, under 50,000 in any other municipality are subject to that business tax. I will say we are going to be having a industry specific webinar just for contractors here coming up in a few months. So be on the lookout for that, because there are some special rules for contractors that just apply to them. One thing I want to mention for sure is that a business tax return is required for any entity that has a standard business license, and that is regardless of gross receipts. So on the top line of this chart, you see it says that retailers with 10,000 plus in any county are subject to the tax. Even if you have less than $10,000 in gross sales for a period, but you have a business license, you're still required to file. So the holding a business license in a county or a city requires you to file regardless of gross sales. Okay, so moving on here to when to file the business tax return. It is due on the 15th day of the 4th month following the fiscal year end. So an example here is if you're on a calendar fiscal year, so your fiscal year ends on December 31st, the return is due on April 15th. So this year, actually, we have the 15th falls on Good Friday, which is a holiday. And of course, the 16th and 17th fall on a weekend. So the business tax return is due on April 18th, Monday, April 18th. So as with any tax returns, if the return due date falls on a holiday or a weekend, it's going to be due on the next business day. So the business license actually expires on the 15th of the month after the tax due date. So you can see from this timeline here that the due date to file the return for a business with the 12/31 fiscal year is on 4/15, but the business license will expire on 5/15. One important thing to note is that there is no option for filing an extension for the Tennessee business tax return. So if the business tax return is not filed or paid, the business license will expire and the taxpayer is going to be receiving an assessment from the Tennessee Department of Revenue, and that could end up in collections. Definitely something that you do not want to do for sure. So file and pay timely, very important there. All right, the next few slides here are going to discuss where to file and how to file on TNTAP. It is required that you file online. If you're already set up on TNTAP, you'll see here, this will all look familiar to you. If you are not yet set up on TNTAP, our online filing site. We're going to give you some information a little bit later on some resources to help you get set up with a TNTAP account. So we're just going to proceed here assuming that you know how to get to TNTAP and that this will look familiar to you. But once you're in your TNTAP account, it looks a little bit like online banking. You'll see access to all your different tax accounts. What you're seeing here is a screenshot of what a business tax account looks like from the summary page on the TNTAP screen. And you'll see there next to your account, there's a link that says view and file returns. You're going to click there if you want to view or amend any previous returns. But if you're within a period where there's a return coming up that you've not yet filed, you're going to see a special link right below your account that says file now. And that's if you're only going to see that if you have a return that has yet to be filed, that is ready for you to file. So a definition here that's very important as we're getting into how to start your return is the definition of gross receipts. And that is all sales derived from products or services that are taxable. The very first question you're going to get to after you click on amending or filing a return is, do you have gross sales of services or products to report? And you'll answer yes or no there. You have to. It doesn't let you move on without answering yes or no. If you answer yes, it will populate a list of locations to file for. If you choose no, then the next step is simply to just click submit and that files your return for you. There is a minimum return. So even if you didn't have any gross sales, the minimum return is going to be $22 per jurisdiction. So if you're within a municipality, a city or town that has business tax, that would be 22 for that municipality and then 22 for the county for the state level tax. So even if you choose no, there's still going to be an amount, a minimum amount due there. So if you click yes, and then next, within the return, it'll take you over to a list. The example that I have here just lists one location ID link there. If you had multiple locations for your business throughout one county, several jurisdictions, you're going to see the whole list there. And it is required that you file for each location that you have on your return, even if gross receipts for a location are 0. So you'll simply click on the hyperlink of the location ID to open up that return. Once you open up the return, here's what it looks like. This is a screenshot of within TNTAP. It'll make you choose either retailer or wholesaler. And once you do that, the rates will automatically populate. You'll see here in this example, this is Davidson County, and the rate for Davidson County and Nashville, which is where this business is located, the retailer rate for those jurisdictions automatically populates. The next question that you will have to ask, you see there's a little asterisk there. I know it's quite small, but is, do you have gross sales of services or products to report? Again, if you click no here, it just takes you right back to be able to submit the return. But if you click yes here, it will populate some other questions that you'll have to answer. And those questions are, do you have, I already said that one. Do you have any deductions to report? Do you pay county personal property tax? Or did you pay city personal property tax? You have to answer these questions yes or no before moving on. If you click yes for deductions, it will actually populate a schedule a little further down. We'll go over that in a minute. If you click yes for personal property tax for the city or county, those fields will populate as well. So just a note here about personal property tax, because we often get questions about this. This is a tax that's imposed by cities and counties on all property that is owned or held by a business to operate. And that includes furniture, fixtures, tools, supplies. One of the most common tests used to differentiate personal property from real property is whether it is movable or not. Personal property is movable and a fixed property is considered real property. So if you have paid personal property tax to the city and or county, you can deduct that on your return. Important to note here that it's assessed at that personal property is assessed at 30% of its value for commercial and industrial property and 55% of its value for public utility property. So here's where here's a screenshot of the Schedule A, which is the tax computation by location. This is where on line 1 you're going to enter your gross receipts, and that's all receipts from services or products minus sales tax remitted. You can look at your sales tax returns to find these figures if you don't keep up with it otherwise, which hopefully you do keep up with that. But that's the only gross sales is going to be the total of all of your receipts minus sales tax. Anything else is deducted that qualifies as a deduction is deducted later in the return. If you did click yes to populating that deduction Schedule B return, those figures, which is line 2 here, are calculated when you fill out your Schedule B. So that just automatically populates after you do Schedule B. Taxable gross sales by state, that is automatically calculated by the system. Next few lines there, the amount of line 5, the amount of county personal property tax is entered in this field, and important to note that that amount cannot exceed 50% of the total state tax. Let's see here, line 6, total county business tax due. Again, like I mentioned, the minimum is 22. That's going to be automatically calculated once you put in your other figures. And the total gross city sales, again, is also calculated by the system. And this is city and county gross sales are on a consolidated return basis, except for class 4 contractors. It's separate for each return. Again, we'll dive into that later this year when we have a specific contractor webinar for you. So line 8 is where you enter the deductions from Schedule B. Line 20, and those figures are calculated from Schedule B and will automatically populate there. You don't have to put anything in on that line. It just happens for you after you filled out your Schedule B. Same with line 9, total gross city sales. It's calculated automatically by the system. Line 10 and 11, I'm sorry, line 10 is automatically calculated. That's the city tax that's due. The system calculates the applicable rate and populates that for you. And 11 is where you put in your city personal property tax. And again, that as well cannot exceed 50% of the city tax that's due. Total city tax is populated on line 12, and then your total tax is automatically calculated by the system there. So next we are going to dive into what Schedule B is, the deductions. So Tennessee business tax statutes and regulations allow taxpayers to make various deductions that ultimately will reduce their tax liability. So deductions differ from exemptions in that they must be reflected on the business tax return as amounts deducted from total gross sales. All the deductions are provided for in TCA 67 for 711, and we'll detail those here in just a moment. And it's very important that you maintain your invoices and other documents to substantiate claims to deductions. Otherwise, they will not be allowed. So all deductions must be entered by the taxpayer and are totaled by the system and included over there on Schedule A, as I just mentioned in the previous screens. All right, entering deductions. The first one we're going to discuss here is sales of services received by persons located in other states. An example here is we've got a Tennessee computer repair company that repairs a computer in its Tennessee shop for a Georgia customer. After the repair is complete, the computer is shipped back to the customer. That is an example of a repair sale that is deductible. An example of a repair service that is subject to the tax and not deductible from the tax base is example 2 here. A Georgia trucking company has a truck that breaks down in Tennessee. A Tennessee mechanic repairs the truck in Tennessee and sends the bill to the Georgia company. When the truck is repaired, the driver picks up the repaired truck from the mechanic and returns the truck to Georgia. So again, that service would be subject to business tax. The next deduction we're going to discuss is returned merchandise when the sales price is refunded to the customer. The example we'll go over here, a taxpayer sells an appliance to a customer for $250. That customer later returns the appliance, stating it's faulty, and requests a refund. Taxpayer issues the customer a refund by crediting the customer's card. The taxpayer may deduct, the business owner may deduct the sale of proceeds for this returned item from its gross sales. Next deduction is sales of tangible personal property in interstate commerce. So this is deliveries of tangible personal property to customers outside of this state by the business or by a common carrier before the customer obtains possession. These sales are exempt from business tax. So if a customer from out of state obtains possession of the item while in the state, even if it is subsequently removed from Tennessee, that sale would be subject to the tax. I don't have an example listed here, but I can give you one. If you have a business and someone you're selling, let's say you just have a shop located in Tennessee, and someone from out of Tennessee is shopping in your store and buys a product, that's going to be subject to tax. But if someone orders that product and it is delivered to them at their home or location outside of Tennessee, that sale would not be subject to business tax. Next deduction is going to be cash discounts allowed and taken on sales. So the example we have here is a taxpayer offers its vendors cash discounts on credit sales to accelerate collections. The cash discount is indicated on the customer invoice as follows, as a date and a net 30, indicating that the customer will receive 2% discount if it pays the invoice within 10 days. Otherwise, the payment's due within 30 days. So on a $5,000 credit sale for which the customer takes the cash discount, you can see the calculation here. The $5,000 is what the credit sale was for. They got a discount for paying early of $100. So the net credit sale there that is subject to business tax is going to be $4,900 for this example. The next deduction is repossessions. We're not going to get into this topic right at the moment during this webinar. We are planning on having a webinar in the near future that is specific for motor vehicle dealers because they're dealing with this situation the most, pun intended there. But repossession, the portion of the unpaid principal balance in excess of $500 due on tangible personal property repossessed from the customers is what you can deduct there. Next deduction is amount allowed as trade-in value for any article sold. Again, this definitely applies to motor vehicle dealers, but also lots of other businesses. An example here is a customer purchases a new car from the taxpayer for $30,000. As part of the transaction, the customer trades in a used car and gets a trade-in value of $9,000. So the taxpayer, the business there, the dealership will report on its business tax return the gross sale of 30, but will then on the Schedule B line item for trade-ins list the $9,000 trade-in value. So a credit will not be allowed for trade-ins unless the item traded in is of like kind and character of that which is purchased and indicated as a trade-in by model and serial number. So an example there is if someone's buying a car and tries to trade in, not that this would happen, but trade in a piece of furniture, I guess, or a piece of jewelry, that would not be a trade-in that would be deductible for business tax purposes. Next deduction is bad debts written off during the reporting period. If a taxpayer takes a bad debts deduction for business tax purposes and the debt is subsequently collected in whole or in part, then the amount collected will be again subject to business tax. Next deduction, amounts paid by a contractor to a subcontractor. We will get into that much more in detail during the webinar that we have on contractors. But basically, for a contractor, there's a certain schedule or a worksheet, that you can fill out to be able to deduct payments that you've made to subcontractors. The subcontractor must have a business license and must be performing activities that are described in our law in TCA 674708. And it's also very important that the contractor maintains in its records a copy of the subcontractor's business license. So another deduction is miscellaneous federal and state excise taxes. There are lots listed here. There are federal excise taxes imposed on beer, gasoline, motor fuels, tobacco. There's Tennessee gas tax, Tennessee motor vehicle fuel use tax, so on and so forth here. These deductions may be claimed only by the taxpayer who made direct payment for these taxes to the applicable government agency. A catch-all deduction line is other deductions not taken elsewhere on the return. So these could be, these include but are not limited to accommodation sales, casual and isolated sales of tangible personal property, sales of school supplies and meals to students and school employees. So these deductions may be taken only if included in the gross sales, Schedule A, line 1. All right, so we've entered in all of our gross sales at this point. We've entered in any personal property taxes that have been paid, and we have entered in any amounts for deductions. The next thing you will do after you complete all those fields is to click Next. You scroll down within the TNTAP return and click Next. You're going to be taken over to a summary screen. It's called Return Summary. And you'll see here on the Return Summary screen, it's the state tax due, the city tax due, the total tax due. I will make it's important to note here that if you are filing a late return, we'll touch on this in a minute as well, but if it will not calculate penalty and interest for you just yet. Those lines, line 5 and 6, if it is a late return that is subject to penalty and interest, you will have to calculate that yourself right here, or just submit the return and check in the next day to see how much penalty and interest has accrued. But at this point also, you can save your draft if you're not ready to file just yet, and plan on maybe making some changes and don't want to have to amend. You can go to a previous screen, but selecting next is how to proceed with the filing of the return. Once you click next, you're taken to a payment screen. So on the payment page, you must choose either yes or no to pay by ACH. And ACH is a bank account and routing information. If you are not using your bank account and routing info, which you may have already plugged into your TNTAP account, the other option is going to be to pay with a card, and that's either credit card or debit card. But if you choose yes here to ACH, it will take you over to a separate ACH payment page. If you choose no here, that means you're going to pay with a card. You will click submit. So either way, you've got to click submit after entering in your info. So I will say at this moment, and this rate changes, the fee to use a card, and that's a debit or a credit card, is currently 2.29%. So one thing that a lot of people don't know is that you can file a return, and within TNTAP, you can schedule the return, schedule the payment for later. If you have all your figures together and want to go ahead and submit the return, but just don't want to pay yet, that is something that you're able to do with TNTAP. So on TNTAP, from the main page that I showed you before you even opened up the filing return page, you can view your previous returns by clicking on View and File Returns. In order to amend a return after you click on View and File, the options there are View or Amend a Return for different periods. If you click on that, View or Amend Return, I've zoomed in here, the options there that you'll see, you can either view the submission, view the payment, print that return, or click to amend. If you click to amend a previous return, it will walk you right back through the exact same process that I just showed you. So okay, well, actually, here's a little bit more information on amending a return. So if you did choose amend, you'll repeat those same steps, replacing the new figures that you're using to amend the return. It's important to note here that if amending the return results in additional tax liability, um, if the return is amended after the period's due date, it is advised to submit that return, let it post overnight, and then log in the next day to see the total amount. As I had mentioned before, penalty and interest will not calculate until overnight. So you may want to just submit it without payment if you don't want to do your own math to calculate penalty and interest, or log in the next day to see what that is. So if the amended return results in a credit on the account, then you can either leave the credit on the account. We will move it directly to the next liability owed, or I'm sorry, the system moves it to the next liability owed, or you can request a refund. And that's a very easy process on TNTAP as well that you can do. Some TNTAP help information here. Once you're logged into TNTAP, you'll see a little icon at the top of your homepage that looks like a chat box. And this is our virtual bot. It searches our help database for you. It's not a real person, but it can help search our system if you have any questions about your return or about TNTAP. If it does not provide the answer that you need, you can click the hyperlink to either send us a direct message that sends us an email that we will respond to during business hours immediately, or it'll give you our number that you can call us during business hours as well if that bot doesn't answer your questions. On our website, tn.gov/revenue, if you click on revenue help, there is a plethora of information. Right now, I have an example here of specific TNTAP help. Once you click on TNTAP within revenue help, you'll see here the subheadings for general how-to videos, information about TNTAP, logging in, registering for TNTAP, payments, tax returns. Once you click on the how-to videos, these are some helpful videos we've got. There's a video for creating a TNTAP log-on, filing a sales tax return, filing a business tax return. That'll walk you through some of the same steps we've discussed, not in so much detail though. Video about logging into TNTAP, gaining access to other accounts, and creating access as a third party. So lots of great information we have on TNTAP on revenue help. Some other resources from our main tn.gov/revenue page. You can find general information about business tax by clicking on taxes and then business tax. FAQ articles specific to business tax. Again, you'll click on revenue help and then business tax. Our business tax manual is really great. It is an exhaustive, very extensive manual that pretty much has everything you would ever want to know about business tax. Put in simple terms for you though. You get to that by going to our website, clicking on tax resources, and then clicking on tax manuals, and then business tax. You'll see there all of our other tax manuals as well. You can view past webinars about business tax by clicking on our taxpayer education page, and then tax webinars and our webinar video library. How to contact us, you can go to our website for like the 100th time now, tn.gov/revenue. Send us an email at revenue.support@tn.gov or call us at 615-253-0600. We'll respond to emails and answer calls with a real live human being Monday through Friday, 8 through 4:30, unless it's a holiday. So that concludes the presentation portion of the webinar. One more little page here, how to follow us. If you're a business owner or a tax professional, we highly recommend that you follow us if you're on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Lots of information there. Every once in a while, hate to say it, but things happen with our systems, system issues, or the call center goes down, or those are very few and far between, rare occurrences. But if anything like that were to ever happen, we're going to put information out to taxpayers on our website, but then also via social media. We put information about upcoming events we have, all of that information. So please follow us. We are going to take your questions now with Mitch, our call center manager, and Billy Trout. Billy, Mitch, I see that chat has been very active. Lots of questions coming in. And again, we had lots that even came in before this event. So let's go through some of those now.
Oh, thanks, Katie. Hey, can you go back over everything you just said? Oh, I'm
I
just
think we'll I
kidding.
think we'll go over in time if we do that.
No, no, we're not able to do that. Thank you very much. So, yeah, like you said, Katie, we've had a lot of activity in chat, and we've tried our best to respond to as many people as we can. But I got news for you. It's like 900 to 3. So you're the 900 and we're the 3. So it's not going to work out. We just can't. But we've tried our best. So the thing, like Katie had said earlier, about being able to reach out to us by email or by giving Mitch's folks a call in the call center. We'll help you. We'll absolutely get you going. You're a very wise person for joining us today, not because we think we're so important, but because of the fact that here you are a couple of weeks ahead of a filing due date for most taxpayers being April 18th, as Katie said. But yeah, we can go ahead and knock this stuff out here pretty quickly, and then you'll know exactly what you're doing. You have all your ducks in a row too, and we'll talk about this cool thing called payment warehousing in a second. So, Mitch, you're online with us. Hello there, Mitch. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going, everyone?
Doing good. I think Mitch is just glad he doesn't have to answer the phone or have, with what's going on in the call center today. So, anyway, I thought, Mitch, what we would do is maybe go through some of the questions that were some of the more common questions that were submitted before the webinar today. And the first one deals with business licenses. We talked a lot about the filing of the business tax return and the TNTAP and all that, but business licenses are another piece of that. So what do you think about that? How can people find a copy of their business license?
Yeah, so the whole point of filing the business tax return for the majority of taxpayers is to obtain a new business license. You need that business license to conduct business in whatever jurisdiction you are holding that license for. And so we get a lot of questions on where they receive this license. Some taxpayers can receive it in the mail, and they receive it directly from the clerk. The clerk sends those out. We are not the licensing authority, so when you file that return and pay that tax to us, that's essentially our part of that process, and then the business license office is the one that issues that license. Now, for a multitude of jurisdictions, you can actually access this license in TNTAP. And so the clerks actually push the license to TNTAP. And there's a spot where you go into the business tax account and there's a link that says view licenses. And any licenses that the clerk has pushed to your TNTAP account, you can access them there and print them there. I think Katie might be, I'm not sure if she has an image showing where that'll be. Yeah, so if you look on the image that she's provided, there is a link that says additional actions/licenses. After you have filed your business tax return and submitted that payment, we typically tell taxpayers to wait approximately a week, maybe 2 weeks, and they can view any licenses that the clerk has submitted. Now, if you do not see any licenses there, then you will need to reach out to that county or city clerk and request to, have that license either mailed to you, or maybe they can email it to you. It really just depends on the clerk. So.
Yeah, and that's a really good important point there too, Mitch. We get a lot of questions, particularly for businesses that operate in multiple counties and cities, like contractors. The city and county officials, like Mitch said, are the licensing officials. They get to call the shots. Most of them have chosen the TNTAP option for the viewing of licenses because it's also convenient for them. And to be honest with you, it saves them some money in mailing. So I think that's fine. But at the same time, it is their responsibility, and we do want them to be able to provide you with the license, but in the method that they choose. So if they choose to mail it to you, that is what they will do. Two of our larger cities in counties in Tennessee are Shelby County, Memphis, and Davidson County. Obviously, the Nashville metropolitan area. Those are not on TNTAP. Those will always come in the mail. So just to let you know that, because that covers quite a lot of you there too. Mitch, going on to another question, we had several people in chat talk about other types of taxes, and maybe we should just touch on this here very briefly about having an LLC versus a sole proprietorship. What does that mean, and all that kind of stuff too. So So, business tax is a gross receipts tax. So it's based on whatever your business is doing relative to receiving gross income, okay, or gross receipts. But talk for a second what maybe some issues might be with LLCs and what they need to consider, Mitch.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions if the business tax return is different for sales or sole proprietors compared to LLCs, corporations, things like that. The business tax return is not different. As Billy said, it is based off of the gross receipts, whereas the franchise and excise, if you are an LLC, corporation, limited liability company, business trust chartered, registered with Tennessee Secretary of State, then you would owe that franchise and excise tax. And that's completely separate from the business tax. It's completely separate from the business license. And this information is listed on our website. The franchise tax is based on the greater of net worth or the book value of real or tangible personal property owned or used in the state of Tennessee. The excise portion is based on the net earnings or income of the tax year. So it's a little bit of a difference between the franchise and excise and business tax, but the business tax does not change depending on the structure of the entity.
Yeah, that's a great point too. Maybe this is a good time too to mention a couple of our sister agencies in the Tennessee state government too. The Secretary of State's office is responsible for receiving annual reports from businesses who are LLCs, corporations, etc. The annual report process is something that they own. They are the ones that do that. We don't do that at the Department of Revenue. So both of these things are very important. The filing of an annual franchise and excise tax return to us, but also an actual annual report over to Secretary of State. So check with their website, give them a call as you wish. We can provide that information. If you want to call us, we can tell you how to get a hold of these folks. It's no problem, but just make sure you're reaching out on that too. Another interesting question that we get, and it even came up in chat here too, is about the Department of Labor and the unemployment insurance sign-on. They have a whole different sign-on program over there at Labor for unemployment insurance. And the key point on that whole deal is that it is indeed a separate system. So we are not integrated with that particular system. So we're kind of like the tax people. The unemployment people are kind of like the labor people. The Secretary of State people are the Secretary of State people. But that's the way it is right now. And we're thrilled to be able to offer TNTAP and some of the other tools for all your tax needs here. But certainly it's a bit of an issue when you're dealing with multiple agencies. But anyway, folks are there to help you in those agencies as well. So another interesting question is people that they're doing business in multiple locations. So I think that's probably worth talking about. I'll mention this because several people in chat I tried to get to probably wasn't successful getting through to everybody, and I apologize for that. But if you do have multiple locations, you do need to be registered for each location where you're at. Okay. So in other words, if you have a permanent location, let's say you have one in Nashville, you have one in Murfreesboro, you have one in Chattanooga, you have one in Knoxville. Well, then you've got locations that need to be registered there too. However, if they're not permanent locations, you only register where you have permanent locations. Okay. And this is different. And Mitch, you want to talk about the contractors for just a second and why that's different?
Yeah, it's a little different because contractors operate in a plethora of different jurisdictions. You may have one single job in one jurisdiction, and we really just want to know the dollar amount that's being generated from that job. Billy, I think isn't it $50,000, I believe?
Right, that's correct. That's correct. So basically, when you hit that magic $50,000, and by the way, that's of gross income, not profit. So think about that. If you're in the construction business, guys, you know that 50,000 gross is not a whole lot of money in today's world. So that's going to put you on the hook for registering many different locations in the various counties. There's every county has that responsibility, all 95 counties in Tennessee. And there's something around 230 cities in Tennessee that have business tax enacted through an ordinance as well. It's not every incorporated city, but it's a whole lot of them. It's most of them, okay? We actually have a list on our website that tells you all the different cities in addition to the counties where business tax is located. And again, if you have any questions, just let us know and we'll look it up for you.
Right.
So yeah, that's an important thing there, Mitch, and thanks for explaining the contractors there too. Looking at a couple of other things here too. This is kind of an interesting question. When filing business taxes, is this a tax that I can easily file, or do I need an accountant? What do you think, Mitch?
Yeah, so most businesses have found it relatively easy to file this return on their own. We typically do instruct taxpayers that if they are nervous about filing something accurately, then obviously that's what an accountant is there for. That's what those services are there for. And so we would highly encourage those types of taxpayers to reach out and try to find someone to take care of that for them. However, if you just have general questions about the return, you're always more than welcome to reach out to our general call center, and we'll try to provide some guidance on how to file those returns. But majority of taxpayers are able to file the business tax return on their own. The majority of returns that we see accountants needing to file has to do more with the franchise and excise tax, because it's a bit more of a complex tax.
Right, right. And what's interesting about that is, we obviously can't tell you whether something is easy for you or not. That's your determination as to whether it's easy or not. But one very good practice that people can do is to get their federal return done and take the figures from the federal return where you've calculated the gross income, like on Schedule C for the 1040 tax return if you're a sole proprietor. Your gross income is right there. It's so easy. You've got that, and that's your starting point. So that's going to help you a little bit. One thing Katie mentioned during her presentation is something that's a little bit challenging, and that is if you get an extension for your federal income tax, you cannot get an extension for Tennessee's business tax because it's not in the law. Okay. So what you would want to do in that situation is try to work with your figures or with your accountant and maybe come up with some sort of ballpark estimate about what your gross income might have been and your deductions and things of that nature. Go ahead and file the return and remit the amount of money that you feel like is owed. And then once your tax return is completed, your federal tax return, you might need to go back in and amend your return on our TNTAP system to add a little bit of income, subtract away, whatever the case may be, and then you'll have accurate figures. And the reason you want to do it that way as opposed to waiting is because if you wait to file and pay, then you're going to be late and you're going to be charged extra money under state law. And what you want to do is to avoid any unnecessary charges. So that's why you want to try that approach. It's difficult. It's not easy to do, but we're not very interested in charging people extra money. We don't want to do that. That's not our job. Our job is to assess only the amount of tax that the Tennessee legislature says every business needs to pay. So we're very diligent about that, and we want to help you not pay extra money. Believe it. That's true. We do it every day, right, Mitch?
I'll add one comment on that.
Please.
If you do have to amend your return, if you amend it down, that will generate a credit on your on your account that you can either leave there for future taxes, or you can apply for a refund. And you can apply for that refund through TNTAP. We also have a paper claim for refund form that can be filled out. If you amend up and you actually owe more, and obviously it's after the due date, then interest will be applied to that unpaid amount. Penalty is not, though. So just want you guys to be aware of that.
Very good. Yeah, that's a great point. And we're glad to give people credits, do the refunds as necessary. It's great. I mean, we want to balance you out. That's no problem. Mitch, one thing that comes up, what if I was going to start a business and I never did anything? Now what do I do? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so if you applied for a standard business license, you would still need to file a final return. And so you may ask yourself, well, what do I report on this final return since my business did not open? you would essentially just report $0 as being your gross. And then once you have filed that return and paid the minimum tax due, which is $22 per license, you can just request to have that account closed out as of that last filed return. Now, if you did not get a business license at all, it depends on various situations, but the license is what requires the filing requirement. And so that's really what we look for. And so if you did get a license, you have to file at least once. And if your business never started, after you filed that one return, you can request to close out that tax account.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. It is situational. So the one thing you definitely don't want to do is to ignore the situation. You want to be proactive and file or figure out if you need to file. And so reach out to us and let us try to help you with that whole idea, and do it before April 18th. One thing I do want to mention is, again, this whole idea of being early and filing before the due date. So we're talking to you today, as we're recording this today, it's the end of March in 2022. So we have a couple of weeks before our filing deadline, which is April 18th for our December of 21 taxpayers. So there's some time. But I've been in the tax business for a long time, and I've seen every single year what happens on April 15th or 18th this year, and it will be the same this year where people are rushing at the last moment to get things done. Please don't be that person. What we're asking you to do is to go out and try to file this return now, okay? But here's something that's very cool for you to remember. You do not have to necessarily pay the tax until the actual due date. So what you can do on TNTAP, when you get to the payment screen, you can choose to pay it now. That's fine. We'll take your payment and you'll be done. Or you can say, wait, I want you to debit my checking account or my savings account or my credit card on April, say 18th in our example here too. That will be the day that we actually take your payments. Of course, you'll want to note that for your records that we took it out at that point, but or that we're scheduled to take it out at that point. But the good thing about that, guys, is you can be completely through with your filing and payment situation well in advance of the big push. Okay. So when Mitch's call center is on fire with hundreds of people trying to reach us because of various issues, and my good folks answering the email questions are on fire for the same reasons, you won't be that guy. You won't be that person. Okay. So again, we're here to help you. We will be helping you, and we'll be open and trying to help even during some extended hours on that 18th as well. But at the same time, it's difficult. So make your life a little bit easier and let us help you in advance. Okay. Um, I want to talk about services here for just a quick second. You know, in sales tax law, one of the interesting things about sales tax is that sales tax applies to the sale of tangible personal property. That means stuff that you can touch or feel. Okay. And only services, a very few number of services are subject to sales tax, and they're listed in the law. But on the business tax side, what's interesting about that is that most services are subject to business tax. Okay. But there are exceptions. One person in chat I noticed was in the medical profession, and doctors' offices, people like that, dentists, chiropractors, and the like, they are exempt from business tax and business licensing unless they sell tangible personal property that is subject to tax. Let me give you a great example. Veterinarians out there, they're exempt also, okay? But certain veterinarians might sell pet products. They might sell leashes and collars and dog food and cat food and things of that nature. That's very taxable. So they might need a business license just for that portion of what they're doing. But again, we're here to help you guys with questions that you might have on that. And Katie, as we wrap up here, as we're approaching our hour, I might ask you to just again stress these contact points for folks to reach us back at on some of these questions, please.
Sure, absolutely. I've got it up on the screen again right now, just how to Send us your questions either by email, revenue.support@tn.gov, or call us 615-253-0600. Mitch, you're about to log right back into those phones, aren't you?
Yep, you got it.
So if
Hey,
we didn't get to your question,
you
yeah,
should
sorry.
all ask for Mitch directly.
Yeah, just ask for me.
All of you. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Be nice to Mitch. He's a good guy.
He is. That's right. And he's got a great staff. I've seen some of the comments in chat talking about, hey, I've called into your call center and it's great. A few of you have given props to specific people in Mitch's call center, so we love to hear that. We also want to let you know next month's webinar is going to be about professional privilege tax, which may affect some of you. You can always view our past webinars on our website, on the Taxpayer Education website under Webinar Video Library. This one will also be available tomorrow. The video of today's webinar will be available tomorrow. Excuse me, the PDF of this presentation is out there right now. I have a link to it at the very beginning of chat. If you want to click to there. We also, just in closing here, in addition to wanting to thank you for being here, we hope that this has been helpful for you. If you would, please, as you exit the event, just fill out the survey. It takes about 2 seconds. Helps us be able to help you and help serve you better if we get your feedback. We've made lots of changes over the past couple years since we've been doing these, just based on the feedback that you give us on these surveys. So we really appreciate that. And definitely join us on April 5th for the new business workshop. Go register for that on our website for sure.
Yes, and thank you to Katie and Mitch for your participation today. You guys always do a great job, and we appreciate everybody else attending here. Please send us that email. Please call us. We do pick up the phone. We do answer your email. I promise. It's different than what you might think of in other government services. We really are different, okay? Because we will help you, okay? So again, thanks on behalf of all of our folks here. We appreciate you and certainly hope you guys have a good day. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a good one.
Have a great day.
Goodbye.
Bye.